Hey guys, my name's Larry Maurer and I'm here to give a talk on barefoot running. It's going to be a little different than most of the talks I've seen in that this is a practical talk about helping you make decisions about what you should do with your barefoot running, or if you're a physician or a physical therapist, what you should tell your patients. Let's get started. So, who am I? I'm a podiatrist, a foot doctor. I work in Kirkland, Washington. I'm a longtime runner, and I practice foot and ankle sports medicine. So I see runners and football players and soccer players and athletes all day. I've been studying barefoot running for a little over 10 years. Why is barefoot running so popular? That's a great question. Because, as I said, I've been studying it for 10 years. Nobody really wanted to talk about barefoot running 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. It was just us foot guys discussing theory and being really excited about the mechanics of the foot and ankle and taking that perspective on it. Now, everybody wants to talk about barefoot running. All day in my office, barefoot running, barefoot running, barefoot running. Everybody wants to talk about it. Why is it so popular? A couple reasons. Number one, the book, Born to Run by Chris McDougall. Great book. I really liked the book. I liked it despite the fact that they vilified podiatrists a little bit. But it's made barefoot running really big. He's done a great job of marketing the book. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. Spectacular book, but it's made barefoot running a popular concept. The next thing that made it popular was the marketing effort of Vibram. They came out with a 5-finger shoe. So they're marketing the minimalist concept. Everybody should run more barefoot, wear our shoes with toes. So that's driving it. It's also important to know that barefoot running is popular because at its base it's true. And I think the truth rings. The fact is, barefoot is best. And in general, we find that the less intervention we have from companies or individuals in terms of mechanics and the human body, the better, right? As we monkey around with things, we usually screw something up. So in general, the concept rings true, and for a specific population, it is true. Why is it best for you? And it's best for you for a bunch of reasons. Number one, it builds arch musculature, right? That's a big one with the physical therapists I talk to. They want you to build your arch musculature. They want you to make a better arch. Being barefoot should build arch musculature. Shoe weight changes biomechanics. That's another thing that's true, and it's been validated in study after study after study. The more you put on the bottom of your foot, the more weight at the end of that long pendulum, the more your mechanics change. The angle your ankle, knee, and hip take when they hit the ground are different when you put a shoe on. So the more weight, the worse. You should try and minimize that weight. The lateral heel counter on the shoe. So on this shoe, this is called the lateral heel counter for anybody who's watching this who may not be a shoe guy or a foot guy. On the outside of the shoe, it's called the lateral heel counter. And when your foot comes in and lands, if that's outside of where your heel would normally land, it's going to change the mechanics of your foot. In specifics, it whips it to the inside. It's called a pronatory whip. And that makes a big difference in your shoe strike or your foot strike. So that's another reason shoes are not great for you, right? The upper of the shoe, the part that goes over your toes, interferes with normal toe spread. So in general, we want our toes to spread out like an Aikido athlete, where when they hit the ground, they dissipate the force properly. That toe spread really makes a big difference. So you don't want a shoe that interferes with toe spread, and truthfully, most do. The other reason is more practical. Dark, moist environments breed toe fungus. If you're over 70, chances are good you're groaning right now because you have toe fungus in this country. It's an epidemic. It's huge. I don't want to talk a lot about toe fungus, but that's another reason barefoot is best, because the sun is fungicidal or antifungal. It kills toe fungus, and if our feet were out to the sun, then we wouldn't have so much toe fungus. The last reason that I want to go over today is that the sole of the shoe, all that soft, cushy stuff, which you literally go into the shoe store looking for and feel good when you put them on, you go, that feels good, that soft, cushy sole. It interferes with your body's ability to sense the impact as you hit the ground, right? It desensitizes your foot. It shields you from the truth. And some people theorize, and I believe this, that it changes the way you run. You run differently in shoes than you would without shoes because you can't tell that you're slamming your foot into the ground in an awkward way. So those are all great reasons that you shouldn't wear shoes, right? Barefoot's best. Other more theoretical reasons. The anatomy is perfect. Our anatomy is perfect. We're all born perfect, and we're born with everything we need. And that's a great concept, and it's very validating, and it makes us feel good, right? Something that I agree with and that I depend on as a physician is that the body takes care of itself. It's going to do the right thing. If something's going in the wrong direction, it's because we're doing the wrong thing. We're overthinking. We're overtreating. Typically, the body does the right thing for itself in the big picture. I am not concerned about the skin. People don't like barefoot running, or people say, I don't want to barefoot running because my feet are so sensitive. I am very confident that your skin would toughen up. If I took away all your shoes and didn't let you run with shoes or walk around with shoes, skin would toughen up, not a problem. That's the least of my worries. So, barefoot is best. Another argument is that injury rates have never improved with fancy shoes, orthotics, all these fancy things, all these anti-pronation, gel packs, blah, 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 have never improved injury rates, right? That's a big argument, and there's a bit of truth to that. It's cheaper. If you're cheap, and everybody is, including me, you don't want to spend $150 on a pair of shoes, and bare feet are free, right? That's a big argument. Feet are beautiful, they should be out, they should function well, and they are, and it's an amazing functioning piece of mechanics. It's unbelievable, and that's a reason to use them right. So, let's take a closer look at some of those statements, because all of them are true to some degree. The first one, this is fun for me, because I like to play the too cool for school card, just like everybody else does. Injury rates have not increased. Recently, and by recently I mean 2007, and I haven't found anything any more recent, I just did this search. But 2007, British Journal of Sports Medicine found through a meta-analysis, and a meta-analysis, if some of you aren't researchers, is an analysis of the studies. So they took 1,113 studies and they analyzed them to find out the true answer. They first put them through kind of a quality test, and they eliminated all the studies that were worth nothing, garbage studies that were done poorly or didn't meet their standards. After they did that, they had 17 studies left, and that'll tell you something right there. You can't just read a study, read the conclusion, and be done. So the vast majority, I mean 1,113 down to 17, were thrown out the window. So those 17 studies were analyzed. Of those 17 studies, they found that when they put all the data together, that today, injury rates in runners were somewhere between 20 and 79%. Okay? So we know exactly what the injury rates are today, somewhere between 20 and 79%. If you compare that to the last time a big study was done that people respected and people listened to, the incidence of injuries was between 19.4 and 92.4%. Okay? So, if you look at that, and if you look at the conclusion of the 2007 study, you'd realize that injury rates haven't changed. They're somewhere between about 20 and 80%, 20 and 90%, and they have been forever. Right? And that's the conclusion that they came up with in the study. And that's why everybody says, hey, shoe companies, you haven't changed injury rates. If you use some common sense, and we're going to apply common sense to medical literature, which is bad form, but we're going to do it anyway. If you use some common sense, the real conclusion that you have to come up with here is that the last study that was done, we didn't know what injury rates were. This study in 2007, we still don't know what injury rates were. What researcher worth his salt is going to say, I am really confident that you're going to injure yourself between 20 and 90% of the time? How is that helpful? When I'm sitting in a room with a runner, if I tell them, hey, we're going to do this surgery, and it works out great between 20 and 90% of the time, what does that mean? It's complete garbage, right? So the fact is, we didn't know what injury rates were back then. We don't know what they are now. We can't say they haven't changed. I read both those studies, and I read the studies that they were based on. They're all garbage, okay? Some of the, and I see runners every day, but some of the hypotheses and some of the findings and some of the numbers they did and the way they did the studies, you can't do it. It's too complicated a subject to tackle in the first place, and that's the real answer. So don't listen to that when they say that injury rates haven't changed. Were we all born to run? I get a little bit annoyed when people say that, and you never hear of anybody saying that we were all born to run. I hear people say it all the time, and the people who are saying it are all about the same. They look kind of like me. They're skinny, they're healthy, they're running, okay? I'm a little disturbed when people say that because they discount the other half of the patients I see, which includes people who were clearly just not born to run. And there are a bunch of reasons why you could be not born to run. I personally was not born to run. I have a bone that sticks out of the bottom of my foot. In every other way, I'm a runner. I'm built like a runner. I'm perfect for running. But with that bone sticking out of the bottom of my foot, I can't even walk across a hardwood floor without my bone breaking. So I run now, and I can run as far as I want, and I've been known to run fast sometimes. But it's because of orthotics, and it's because of shoes that cushion and make my foot a more uniform surface as it hits the ground. I've tried running barefoot. There's no way. I mean, I'm not born to run. So it invalidates me when you say we were all born to run. And there's people with bigger issues than mine, right? I mean, I see patients with club feet. There are patients with extra toes, not as many toes. There's all kinds of problems. From a mechanical standpoint, there are medical limitations. Maybe they're a diabetic. Maybe they have a hypothyroid. Maybe they have some sort of a glandular disorder. There are genetic predispositions. Some people, their cartilage breaks down more easily than others. Some people, their tendons are looser. There's a ligamentous laxity, doesn't provide the support. There are a lot of things. There are psychological factors, an inability to disengage, right? The person can't run because they can't disengage from something else, or they can't stop running because they can't disengage from running. So there are a lot of things that play into the born to run thing, but the fact is we weren't all born to run. The truth is we were all born to die at some point miserably, and most of us were born to die earlier than we would have had we not been born in such a nice time when there are contact lenses and antibiotics and shoes and clothes and all kinds of other things that make life a little easier on us. So we're weakening the gene pool, but all surviving. And I'll soften that a little bit for you a little bit later. So a couple other things. Were we born to run here? I do believe that there's that small population that was born to run. Completely genetically perfect, predispositions out the window, great biomechanics, boom, you're born to run, right? Well, they're born in America. There was a good study done in India that compared the shod versus unshod, meaning the kids that wore shoes versus the kids that didn't wear shoes in India. And it found, and it compared different age groups, it found the kids that wore shoes from the ages of 0 to 6 had a 4 times greater incidence of flat foot than the kids that didn't wear shoes. And the theory is that the kids that didn't wear shoes got more used to scrunching their toes and did more of that and had to grasp the ground and walk in the dirt in ways that the other kids with shoes on didn't have to do because we got a nice grippy surface and there are a lot of things that make it easier for us. The arch musculature didn't develop, that's the theory, and the incidence of flat foot was higher. Great study, really controlled a lot of the variables, and was not even close in terms of the incidence of flat foot. So if you were born in America or in any industrialized society and your kids wore shoes from 0 to 6, probably not the right thing to do. So a good piece of advice that I give to all parents is keep them out of their shoes. Now, I had 2 kids and they wore shoes, and they even wore shoes that light up, right? The little ones that when they stamp on them, they light up and they're the worst for you. But you know, you got to do what you got to do, and you got to get out of Target somehow. So, but if you can keep your kids barefoot, that's best for you. Flat surfaces. It's unbelievable. Our impact on the world is unbelievable in a bunch of ways, right? And you can look at a bunch of things. But people don't often think about this. If you think about how you walk around all day, you walk around on completely flat surfaces. I'm walking on a completely flat stage. I go home, my house is flat, my office is flat, the sidewalk's flat, the road's flat. I never walk on natural surfaces. We weren't meant to walk on flat surfaces. Your arch was meant to touch the ground as the harder heel and ball of the foot sunk into the grass or dirt or sand or wherever you're walking, and you had complete contact with the ground. There are 4 times as many nerves in the toes. Your foot is your major contact with the ground the majority of the time as you walk around on the earth. It's meant to be in contact with the ground, and I think if it doesn't contact the ground in the way it was meant to be, you have less information about the world you live in. So we all walk in an unnatural situation on flat surfaces where our arch is up off the ground, and I think that can play a major role. Other things, you're born in America, there's an abundance of food. Your foot is the same whether you weigh 300 pounds or 150 pounds. It's the same foot. And so I see a fair number of 300-pound patients with foot problems, right? That makes a big difference. Let's talk about some other things. Biomechanics. A lot of military literature, because they're looking at humans as products, and they want to know how can they keep these kids from breaking down, have found that as your mechanics deviate from neutral, and I'm talking about foot mechanics here, I'm a foot doctor, so I tend to focus on that, but as your foot mechanics deviate from neutral, high arched or cavus feet versus neutral feet versus super flat feet, injury rates increase. Okay? And it only makes sense that the laws of mechanics apply to the human body as well as to everything else. Biomechanics and injuries that create differences in your mechanics. So if you played football and you tear the meniscus in your knee or you tear your ACL, that joint is at increased risk for arthritis. So as your mechanics change from neutral and normal to high arched or flat and abnormal, as your mechanics change, injury rates increase. Good studies on runners have shown that running doesn't increase injury rates unless you have some sort of biomechanical abnormality. Okay? The vast majority of us have a biomechanical abnormality. So if your biomechanics are perfect, then running is not going to increase your injury rates. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. This is where the rubber hits the road. I started this entire conversation when I was a teenager and I was running and I was playing sports, and my mom said, "Hey, you got to stop all that running. Man, you're going to ruin your joints." And it just didn't seem right to me. You know, I was that same patient that comes in to me right now with that righteous indignation. I said, "No way, there's got to be some proof out there that running is good for you." And what I found was some proof that running is good for you. Great studies indicate that running increases circulation to the joints, increases cardiovascular fitness, bone density, and muscle mass. And there's all kinds of reasons that running is good for you. But unfortunately, my mom was right, and running increases injury rates. So if you compare couch sitters with runners, injury rates are going to be much different, and they're going to be more injured on the running side. The people who are playing sports are more injured. The minute you get off the couch, you're putting your joints at risk. And that's a fact. And you know, you can try and argue with it, but it's common sense and it's logical. So I think we should start from that point when we're making decisions about what to do with our lives and how to progress. Accept that risk. Accept that we're risking our joints for the other benefits and make that choice in the right direction. So any ballistic movements are going to increase your risk, right? So I do surgery on the foot and ankle. And so in the book, Born to Run, they kind of made you out to be the bad guy. And man, looking at that x-ray right there, you'd say, whew, that guy's mean. Why would he do that to anybody? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think there's 6 screws and 3 pins in her foot. We're going to talk about that case a little bit later. But I wanted to put that in there right now to illustrate the fact that your decisions concerning your running are going to have implications later. You're taking a risk when you decide to run. You're upping the ante. You're looking for a better life. You're looking for more out of life. And in doing so, you're taking a risk. Okay? So, some things that I deal with. Poor biomechanics, flat foot. If you're a kid, what I see in kids, early symptoms of flat foot are Seaver's disease, which is a growing pain to the heel. The kids that come off the soccer field, and my kids play soccer and you see it all the time, my heels hurt and they start limping, and what's wrong, my heels hurt. It's an easy thing to take care of and usually associated with flat feet. Island's disease is another apophysitis or growing pain type of problem that I see in the foot that responds well to mechanical control. Knee pain. If you're a kid or an adult and you have knee pain, well, let's start at the foot. Foot, ankle, knee, hip, or back pain that increases as you walk or run, you should have your mechanics looked at, right? It's not an injury. You didn't get in a car accident. You didn't go skydiving. You didn't fall and twist it on the football field. It's just, man, the more I stand, the more my knees hurt. Well, there may be some malalignment that's leading to arthritis or injury later on, and it just makes sense to look at that. So if you're going to up the ante, you're going to take those chances, get off the couch, take a look at your mechanics there. Midlife symptoms, plantar fasciitis, right? I see it all day. I see it, the chiropractor sees it, the therapist sees it, the naturopath sees it. I'm sure the psychologist sees it. Everybody sees plantar fasciitis. And I think that goes back to us having a weaker arch because of that age 0 to 6 thing we talked about. It really speaks to the flat surfaces, and that arch musculature is under a lot of strain, and so are the deep fascia structures on the bottom of the foot. So that's a kind of a midlife thing I see. Bunions and hammer toes. The feet, if there's an imbalance in the pull of the tendons on the inside versus on the outside, the feet change, bones drift, toes curl up, bunions develop. Nobody wants to hear that they have to have bunion surgery, but they, believe it or not, they submit to it, they beg me for it, they ask for it, and they, you know, it's a weird thing to be a guy where people come in and say, please cut into my foot and put screws in and change my foot, and I won't walk on it for 6 weeks, and I'll take 6 months off. And so it's a big deal. You don't want those things to develop. Late symptoms, osteoarthritis. That x-ray I showed you, she wasn't that late in life, but osteoarthritis, and then ruptures. As those mechanical changes happen, as that overload happens, it gets more important later in life when we don't heal as quickly, right? If you're 12, you heal up at an amazing rate. When you're 85, that rate has slowed. You don't heal up, you don't get away with as much. So from a mechanical standpoint, let's look at this carefully. This is a guy, he's a real nice kid from New York City, and he waits tables, and he can't survive without orthotics. And we've had him in orthotics for a long, long time, and he does just fine. He's got a really active job. He's super active. He likes to jog. He's moving around. But look at this foot. Look at the angle this foot takes, this heel takes, and look at how prominent the inside of his ankle is. You see how that ankle bone sticks out there? Well, you got 3 tendons that run down the inside, 2 tendons that run down the outside. These tendons are overstrained. As you make this angle, you increase the length of the course of those tendons, which puts more tension on them, overloads them. These tendons are underworked, okay? He can't wait tables. He can't do what he needs to do without some help. And that's why, as a kid, he came in and we've been taking care of him. So look at this. I mean, man, his arch is right on the ground, right? There's no question about that. Ankles collapse to the inside, big toe here. And the kicker, wait for it, man, he's only got 4 toes. I mean, this guy just won the foot lottery, didn't he? He's got 4 toes and that flat foot, okay? So, was he born to run? Is this guy excited when he hears that everybody in the world is born to run? There's no way he's born to run. There's no way he's running. There's no way he's running a marathon, okay? So, look at this. And this is another thing, right? A lot of the people I talk to are just horrified. Oh my goodness, you make people wear orthotics. Why would you do that? Orthotics, they're terrible. You're the devil. Well, look at this guy. I mean, now his heel's lined up under his leg, right? So we've reduced the force here. We've added force out here. Orthotics are not a brace. They're not going to weaken your arch. They're just changing the position of the bones so that your tendons are appropriately strained. So we don't have overload here, and we don't have tendons taking a free ride out here. The joints are lined up the way they want. This is going to rotate the knee to the outside. It's going to rotate the hip. It's going to decrease the lumbar lordosis at the back, and it's going to take the strain off the entire system. Big deal. We put a piece of plastic in his shoe. If you've got any question, get the piece of plastic, put it in your shoe. If it doesn't help, then take it out. Big deal, big risk at this level, at this point when your foot's flexible and you're young and you're healthy. If this guy came in and talked to me about born to run or being born or I want to run barefoot, and I do have those patients with that foot not exactly that foot. Most of them have all their toes. But with that kind of foot, they come in and they say, I want to run barefoot. I tell them the risks, and we talk about it, and we have a big discussion. They hate it. So let's talk about that x-ray I showed you earlier. This woman who had that fusion done was 54. 54 is not that old. All your joints should not be trashed by age 54, okay? So I like this case because it takes into consideration a bunch of things, and it shows people that you have to really look at the whole picture. So here's her foot before surgery. X-rays are tough to see, but and you may not look at a lot of x-rays. But here's the simple thing. Joint space. There's space between these bones. What holds those bones apart is cartilage. There's no joint space through here. This is the joint that broke down, and we usually see that. At some level, your joints are going to break down. Some levels are going to be spared, and some are not. In her case, her entire midfoot's terrible. She was a person who, for psychological reasons, because of her situation, ran to cope with a bad situation. Her doctors kept her going for a long, long time with narcotics, and she ran, okay? So here she is. Look at that. There's no joint space there. Complete collapse here. You don't have to be a foot doctor to see that. Complete collapse in here. This joint looks all right. These guys look fine. And we did a lot of studies and a lot of tests, and we found out which joints were upset. And she's in terrible, terrible pain. Can't survive without narcotics at this point. Okay? So before this surgery, the weekend before this surgery, and this was a very emotional process, by the way, for her, she ran a marathon. She went out and she loaded up on her drugs and she ran that marathon because that's the way she dealt with life. And so, again, terrible guy, I'm an awful guy, but she begged me to do this, right? I fused all these joints and it feels a ton better. Those bone-on-bone joints hurt. When you take them away, it does a great job of relieving the pain. You don't lose a lot in cases like this. It's not a hard decision to make as a surgeon because those joints without cartilage, they didn't move anyway. So she already had a stiff foot, stiff, flat foot, and she was working on her knees and her hips and her back. So we've normalized her mechanics. We've moved them towards normal. They're not normal, but they're more normal now than they were before because she was in such pain, and she's off the narcotics, and she's back on track. So there are a bunch of factors. She had a genetic predisposition that included flat foot. Parents were flat-footed. She was flat-footed from a young age. She had a psychological problem, an ability to disengage from the running. She also had issues that kept her in a situation that wasn't ideal. So all of those things added up to, man, I wore all my cartilage away. And these are the decisions you're trying to make right now. What should I do that's going to keep me running, keep me moving, and not keep me from having that kind of surgery? So I think that this is an important discussion to have for anybody. I'm sorry, it's a little gross. It's a gross picture. But this is something I see every day. That last one was extreme, and you could say, well, that's a super extreme case. And no. I see this every day, all day long. Look at this. This is a big toe joint. Sorry, the foot's up here, the toe's down here, big spur here, big spur here. This yellow stuff right here is upset bone, bare bone. This is cartilage right in here, the white stuff, and it's been worn away. The body is taking care of itself. Right? You might look at this and go, oh, look at the body's making a bad choice. No. The body's fusing this joint. If I left this patient for another 20 years, they'd stop walking on that foot, and that joint would fuse on its own in a very painful way. Okay? So we're stepping in to change what happens there to allow the patient to run and to get away. But this is mechanically driven arthritis. And that's what I see at the end of the game. I'd rather make decisions like I talked about earlier with the kid with the orthotics, where there aren't any joints that are trashed, so we're not putting screws in things. We're not opening up big, ugly joints. So let's take a closer look. Were we born perfect? Well, you start to question that, right? Now that you see a couple patients that weren't exactly physically perfect, man, maybe the plan's not so good. Maybe somebody's got it wrong. We weren't born perfect. I'd argue with that. I'd say we are born perfect. We're born perfect to fulfill our role in nature, and that is to procreate, to have babies, to come to continue the race, get on and off, okay? It's important to realize from a philosophical standpoint the difference between being born and fulfilling your role and being happy, okay? Nothing about natural selection, nothing about nature, nothing about procreation suggests that in any way anybody's concerned about your happiness. So all this discussion about barefoot running and whether to run is not a discussion of were you born to do it, is it our right, are we entitled to do it? None of that makes any sense. It's, do you want to be happy? Do you want to run to be happy? And we need to make that choice independent of whether we were born to do it or not, okay? So we were born to survive only if we were the fittest, right? Survival of the fittest, natural selection. I believe in all that stuff, and that's great stuff. The vast majority of us, me included, I've got contacts, we'd be dead, right? Killed early. Most of us were born to die a miserable early death, and we're trying to cheat the system and live a long, happy life. Me too. So we do a lot of things every day towards that end. We weren't born to survive if we weren't the fittest. Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. That's a statement by a Russian philosopher back in Darwin's day. And he was making those comments at the same time Darwin was coming up with his theory of evolution, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Are we the fittest? We as a society, are we the fittest? No way, right? We're soft. I mean, geez, I shouldn't be here. Most of us who wear contacts or depend on shoes or whatever, we're not the fittest, and we've certainly softened the genetic pool from a purely physical standpoint. Okay, we're not the fittest. Were we born to be happy? I already covered that. No, we're not born to be happy. Now, here's where it gets a little bit better, a little lighter. You can step off the ledge. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that is the most adaptable to change. That's why we're here. That's why humans are doing so well, so we can be excited again about ourselves and feel validated. We are really adaptable. We're adaptable to change. We may not be the fittest or the strongest or the best in the best shape or the best looking. Some of us don't have all our hair, but we're really adaptable, and that's why we're here, and we're great. So, as you're trying to run, remember that. Be adaptable to change. Okay? What should we do? What do you do? Okay, I've taken you back and forth. We're not fit. We're adaptable. I think, my opinion is, as I see patients and as I live my life, I think the important thing is to move. Choose to move. Make your choices so that you can continue to move. I don't like the decisions that I have to make sometimes that eliminate the ability for people to move. I don't make them anymore, but sometimes we'd make decisions to take things off legs and make terrible decisions that will end the person's ability to move. Choose to continue to move as long as possible. It's going to speak to your quality of life later on, okay? Nothing about your heart medicine or your cardiologist. They're all trying to keep you alive, but they're not talking about your quality of life. Moving is going to increase your quality of life. Make your decisions in an intelligent, thought-through way that are going to lead to you moving. We don't need to move to survive. We need to move to survive well. Running increases the quality of life, increases muscle mass, bone density, cardiovascular fitness, and helps to relieve stress. I feel a ton better when I'm running versus when I'm letting life get to me and I'm running the kids around, but I'm not exercising. Make decisions in an educated way that protect your ability to move. Okay? Maintain your weight. That's an easy one. That's a behavioral decision that we all need to take responsibility for. I love cookies, just like everybody. I want a cookie right now. I love cookies. But I sometimes avoid cookies because I've gained too much weight, and then I lose the weight, and then I eat more cookies. Maintain your weight any way you can. But again, your feet are the same feet whether you're 300 or 150 pounds. Listen to your body. Pain's an indication that something's wrong. Now, as an athlete, I see patients all the time They go to other foot doctors and they say, well, stop running if it hurts. That doesn't make any sense to athletes, okay? Let's make a fine distinction here, though. As an athlete, you're going to run through a cramp. You're going to run through the pain of your muscles. You're going to run through being hungry or being out of breath, and you're going to push yourself, and you're going to realize you can do things you didn't know you could do. And that's important. Learn and mature and learn to realize that there's different pains. There's stress fracture pains. Your bones are breaking and you need to stop running. So learn to listen to that body in a more intelligent way. And I think that's the reason why we see most major marathoners and triathletes are a little older. They're not 18, 19. They're in their 20s and 30s. So I think they've become smarter and able to push their bodies to that edge without going over the edge. Consider any intervention carefully. So you talk about shoes. Shoes are an intervention, right? Start with the basic process. Start with bare feet and then go from there. Should I put shoes on? Well, consider that carefully. What kind of shoes should I put on? If you're talking about shoes, let's talk about just running shoes. There are 3 categories: neutral, stability, and motion control. Right? Neutral shoes tend to be lighter. And then in each category, there are shoes that are lighter and heavier. The heavier the shoe, the more it changes your mechanics, and we've got to assume it's not for the better. Do they interfere with your toe function? What's that heel counter doing? Right? All of those things are important. Only intervene when you need to and for a good reason in a logical way. Research your situation. So I think people ask me all the time, who should come in and have this biomechanical exam? Anybody who wants to move. It's good information to have. It's not, information is never going to handcuff you. It's only going to allow you to make better decisions. So I think coming in to take a look at your mechanics is critical. Let's find out. Do you have hips that rotate out? Do you have flat feet? Do you have knees that are internally rotated? Doesn't mean you can't run, doesn't mean you can't do anything, but you're just going to understand, and then you're going to be more aware if problems start to develop. So look at your own situation. Do some research on your genetic history. Look at your parents, look at their grandparents. Know what medically everybody had, right? If everybody in your whole family has every joint from the waist down replaced, man, maybe your joints aren't terribly durable, right? And we're all different. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. Maybe my cartilage isn't as strong as somebody else's, but my bones are twice as strong, and my ligaments and tendons are looser or more flexible, but their muscles are of different muscle twitch fiber dimensions. But whatever it is, look at your genetics. Your genetics history is a kind of a looking glass into what you got coming, and it's pretty reliable. I see parents all day long bringing kids in that don't have any pain with terrible flat feet, and I say, well, why are you here? And they said, well, because my knees are killing me, and they feel better when we do this, and I don't want my kids to have knee replacements and hip replacements and blah, 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 blah. So look into your genetic history. Look at your experience and your history. Every time you run, do your joints hurt? Do your bones hurt? Do your feet ache and ankles ache? Any pain that increases as you walk or run is an indication that there may be something mechanically wrong, not necessarily an injury. Obey the laws of mechanics. So I love to treat engineers because we're speaking the same language, and engineers realize that in terms of any system, forces and vectors and all of those things, they apply, and they make sense. And it's the same thing with us. If you look at the body like I do, and my interest in medicine was always mechanical, I couldn't care less about livers or spleens or kidneys. I just have zero interest in that, but I love the mechanics of the human body, and that started from a very young age. And if you look at it, the body has been built to apply the laws of mechanics and to use them to our advantage, right? Our kneecap, it takes a tendon out, so it increases its strength by changing the direction of pull. Those same mechanics that work to our advantage can work to our disadvantage. So if you have mechanical problems, they're going to wear on you. They're going to beat on you. Don't be disillusioned that they don't count. Move your feet, move your hips, your knees, everything towards neutral. I'm a big proponent of keeping things simple. I like orthotics. I like fixing flat feet because it changes the position your foot lands. Your foot lands in a different position and it changes the alignment of your bones. I don't believe in changing the position of your feet with your muscles. Your muscles are tasked with a lot of other functions, and your body as a supercomputer looks at the entire system and chooses where to put your foot with its entire being taken into consideration. You can't necessarily make those decisions on your own. So I don't think you should try and hold up your arches or move your feet in a certain way or rotate your feet in or out or turn your feet. So don't tell your kids to walk with their feet straight. We're not all perfect. Just accept your mechanics and understand them. A simple thing to do that I think is important is to talk about your leg length. 95% of us, and there were good studies done on this, 95% of us have some leg length discrepancy. Our right and left sides all develop independently, and so the vast majority of us have some instability. If you have low back pain that gets worse when you stand, chances are excellent your legs are different, and it's impacting that interface, that joint. It's a simple answer to take care of if you have it properly looked at. So those are some really practical things you can do. Give yourself every advantage. If you're going to get off the couch, great, and I think that's the right thing. But give yourself every advantage so that you don't get off the couch and make the wrong move, right? Keep the shoes and socks off the kids. I think that's a smart thing to do. I wasn't able to do it, but if you're a policymaker out there and you can make that happen, do. Let's keep those kids barefoot and walk them around in the dirt. I should say right off the bat that I think running barefoot's the best. The vast majority of the lectures I listen to are so boring because, and I hope this one's not boring, but they're boring to me because it's all a debate on whether barefoot running is the best. Should we be running barefoot? Man, to me, it seems obvious. It's common sense. We were all born barefoot, right? All the research shows most people are born barefoot. So I don't want to debate whether barefoot's best. Barefoot is best. There's no doubt about it. All those things that we talked about, the arguments, the desensitization, the shielding the foot from the knowledge of the impact, the holding the toes, the effect of the heel counter. I really believe all those things are true. So I believe, let me say it right now, that everybody should run barefoot. The question is how much. I have that bone that sticks out of the bottom of my foot. I can't run barefoot much at all. But I do run barefoot to see how I would run naturally, how I would run without that desensitization, without being shielded from the knowledge of the impact, without my toes being encumbered. So I run barefoot on the pavement to find my form, to find my stride, to find my cadence. And I think it's important to do that. Beyond that, man, you're not going to find me running barefoot ever. I need my shoes and I need my orthotics or else I can't do it. So you've got to choose your degree of running. How much are you going to run barefoot? Are you going to run barefoot once for 20 feet like me, or are you going to run just a little bit at the end of a workout on the infield of a track, on some turf or on some grass? Are you going to run in the sand when you're on vacation in Mexico? Are you going to run in the dirt? I think those are good things to do, and how much you're going to do it? Who knows? I do see patients that where everything lines up. Man, my family's all super tough. They never break down. My history has been I've never been injured. I've never heard anything. We look at their mechanics, perfectly neutral. They're great runners. They're of normal weight and height, and then they don't have any medical problems. And they're perfectly balanced from a mental standpoint. So boom, great, go run barefoot. You don't need shoes. Don't get involved. Don't even put on any sandals. Don't put on any huaraches. Just go run barefoot. Toughen those feet up, and perfect. All right. For anybody who's not in that situation, keep moving. If you can't run barefoot, put some shoes on. If you can't run with shoes, try some orthotics. Learn a little bit more about your mechanics. But just choose to move. Don't let anything get in your way. Keep moving. Use your common sense. Just in terms of trail running versus pavement running, I think it's an important thing to run on the trails. Keep things as close to natural and the way things were meant to be as possible. Running on the pavement, your foot hits the ground in exactly the same way every single time. Why do we see so many overuse injuries? Because you hit your foot the same way, in the same direction every time. All those forces are pounded up through there. When you run on the trails and over the roots and jump over the stream and up the steps, your foot hits a little differently every time. It spreads the love in terms of force, right? So I think move towards natural surfaces as much as possible. This is the most important thing. Remember, it is always advisable to perceive clearly our ignorance. Don't get too excited that we know anything. We don't have a complete picture. And it's an important exercise. If you have a subject, study it to the end. Learn what everybody knows. Learn everything about it that anybody knows. And I've done that with the foot and ankle and with barefoot running. And what I find is that in terms of hard facts, we don't have much. So common sense is your best guide. Listen to everything. Take a holistic view of the whole picture. And as I said earlier, keep moving. Thank you.